Stan Jabalisco here to show you the radio receiver that we had at the University of Minnesota Club radio station W0YC, Whiskey Zero Yankee Charlie, in the 1970s when I attended college at that venerable institution. In the basement of the most prestigious dormitory on campus, Pioneer Hall, we had our station, and we had a lot of equipment that was manufactured home brew by students who didn't always necessarily know what they were doing. I have the scar to this day from a shock I got off of one of those radios from a 3700 volt DC power wire going to the final amplifier. I forget what the tube was called, but the thing stood as tall as me. But what I'm here to talk about is the Collins 75A4, so let's go right to it. This was the receiver that they had and that I always used. Here is probably the best site. Just go to Google. In the exact word or phrase box, type Collins 75A4, and then, with a little luck, you'll get this site, images for Collins 75A4. This was the radio. It was very similar in coverage to the Drake R4A, etc., etc., except it was considered a much higher quality radio, being, of course, a Collins radio. There you go. There's a real good view of that radio. And each band from 80, 40, 20, 15, it covered 11 meters, two 10-meter coverages, and I believe right here is the 160-meter coverage. So it covered a little more than a lot of radios did back then, but it had this tuning. And the thing that I recall most about this radio was how much room there was inside. I would like to see if I can find a site that'll show you, or a picture that'll show you, just how much room there was in there. There was enough room for your cat to get in there. Or for it had a lot of extra room to spare, and it was all vacuum tubes, of course. And back in those days, well, let's start all over again. Back in those days, they left a lot of room inside of radios so you could work on them. There's a vintage Collins station circa the 1950s. There's another image of the radio. Later, the Collins S-line superseded the Collins 75A4 and its companion transmitter. I forget exactly what that was called. We didn't have one of those. I don't remember exactly what the transmitter was at that station. I think it was a Heath kit. But look how much room there is inside of there. Isn't that remarkable? I mean, today, transceivers are packed so tightly that you'll never get inside of there. You'll have to send it in to the manufacturer for repair, like an appliance. With the microprocessors and all of that, they'd never heard of anything like that back then. But this was what that radio looked like. Now, what the heck is this thing doing on here? I mean, is this what it took to lug the doggone thing? Probably. Probably had to load it onto one of these too, and they'd wonder what the heck you were doing. But this is the Collins radio page. I would just recommend that you go to Google and you type in that 75A4 in the phrase box 75A-4. Type in Collins 75A-4. And nostalgize to your heart's content if you're an old timer like I am. And be careful with those transmitters made by students at the college. The insulation on that wire that carried the 3700 volts was just a little bit frayed, and the spark jumped the gap through that little bit of break in the insulation and made an explosion of such magnitude that when I looked down at my hand, I was surprised to find it still there. The wound took about 3 months to heal, and as I said, I have the scar to this day, and long to live in a place like this. The mountains. It is not to be. The closest thing to the mountains is the black holes of Dakota Territory, United States of Amateur Radio, where I now reside and hope to continue residing until that day when something of higher voltage strikes me, like lightning. Don't laugh. It could happen here. We have awful lightning storms. But this is what the mountains, the Bighorn Mountains, look like between Sheridan and Buffalo, Wyoming. They have that wonderful valley and all of that. And I was thinking of one time moving to Buffalo, Wyoming, but it shall not be. It shall not be. I'm content right where I am. A little more nostalgizing from Pioneer Hall at the University of Minnesota, where we did have RFI problems, and some of the students in the dormitory called us up and asked us to do something about it. Generally what I did was just shut off that great big linear that practically took my hand off. Stan Jabalisco signing off from the black holes, as I said, of amateur radio. The black holes of amateur radio indeed, saying 73, which means best regards in ham radio jargon, and so long, which of course means da-da-da-da-da-da.